Awesome. Hi, everyone. Welcome in. We're going to give it just a few seconds for everyone to get into the room before we get started. But while we are waiting, we would love for you to take just a quick minute to scan the QR code and do this survey. Ciria will tell us a bit more about that.
Hi, yeah. If you just want to go ahead and scan that with your phone, just a few questions about our topic, which is the power of place. So just so we can kind of have an idea of what you guys know or what you know and what you would like to be exposed to moving forward. We'll take your time.
I feel like we needed Jeopardy music for this.
Definitely. So we'll give it a few more seconds with this QR and survey. And if you're not able to take it or finish it, no worries at all. It's more just for us to do a pulse check on the room. And again, just kind of see what you know, what you're interested in, what the interest level is at your school or institution or with your students. Awesome. And that's probably about time for that, we'll say. So we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves now and get started with our presentation. So my name is Maddie Reeves. I am the International Officer with Queen's University Belfast. I've been with Queen's for about a year now, and I'm located in the Cincinnati, Ohio area.
Awesome. And I'm Karmen Mallow. I'm the International Student Recruitment Officer for the US at Imperial College London. I've been with Imperial for about a year now too, but in UK higher ed for almost 4 years now. And I'm based in Wisconsin.
All right, and then I'm Ciria Triplett. I am an independent college consultant liaison. I work for Franklin University, Switzerland, and I have been here for a year in my position, and I'm actually based in Charleston, South Carolina.
Awesome. Thank you guys. So we'll go ahead and get started now. So we are chatting today about the power of place and really about international education opportunities at the secondary level and how those can kind of impact your students as they look to what their next step is after graduating. So we want to start with what do we know now about interest in international education today? So we've kind of taken a look at some of the data and research in this area right now. And as you can see with the chart at the bottom of the slide, there's definitely an increase in interest in not only studying abroad, whether it be, short term, a semester, a year, but pursuing full degrees abroad as well. Some of the key motivations around that are going to be career outcomes. A lot of students now are seeing more mobility in terms of wanting to go study somewhere where they can kind of put down roots and potentially get work and stay and immigrate there full time after graduating university as well. We are in such a globally connected world at this point in time too, due to a lot of different factors, but especially the growth and integration of technology in our day-to-day lives. And we also see that there is a really great return on investment with an internationalized education. So if you take anything away from this, just, noticing that kind of shift in more interest from not only studying abroad, but doing a full degree abroad with Gen Z and beyond. And I'm sure that's something that you all resonate with when you are speaking with your students too. So what does international education opportunities look like at the high school level now, and why is it important? There are a lot of ways that you can kind of interweave international education into your current curriculum and extracurricular opportunities for students. So whether that be virtual exchange opportunities or increasing interaction that your institution has with exchange organizations, hosting exchange students, encouraging your students to potentially think about doing maybe a summer abroad exchange program or even a full year exchange program. I know that's becoming more popular. Connecting with international universities through school visits and virtual information sessions. So utilizing the relationships that you're making with us as in-country representatives to kind of bring these opportunities to your students, either in person at college rep visits or through virtual information sessions. And then international travel as well as a big one. We're going to chat more about that and kind of dive into an example of what that might look like for you later on. But we know that schools sometimes will do academic trips, sports-related trips, or club-related trips outside of the US during the summer or different school breaks. So why do these opportunities matter, giving your students these opportunities if they already are not kind of woven into your curriculum and extracurriculars? It gives students early access to different academic and extracurricular opportunities and experiences that they might not have had before or considered, participating in the past. And it does kind of broaden their horizons and show them that, hey, it is easy to connect with someone from another country or potentially go and study in another country, whether that's, again, a semester, a year, or for my full degree after I graduate high school. It also prepares students to have that broader mindset in terms of cultural communication skills, looking at problem solving, getting out of their comfort zones. This is a globally connected world, as I mentioned, and so it is important to give them these kind of experiences that will help build their toolkit up for not only just their personal growth, but then future employment opportunities as well. So I will pass it over now to Ciria.
Okay. And so what does what does a global high school graduate look like, right? So they have enhanced cultural awareness and a global perspective, improved language skills and communication abilities. They have increased adaptability and flexibility going into higher education. So being able to communicate cross-culturally more effectively, begin embracing differences and develop a sensitivity to the hows and the whys and have a more wide worldly viewpoint. Just an overall, is what we're looking for, what happens when you're in a global high school or you become a global high school graduate, excuse me. Having that strong academic foundation is also a big part of it. And that exposure to the different languages, the different cultures, and the environments and the academics has helped them develop tools to flourish as adults and ultimately expand their career opportunities. So you've developed these lifelong networks and these global connections. Their circles have expanded to beyond their normal home locations. What makes an international, go ahead, next slide, please. What makes an international education different? It is academic focus and has depth. Maybe at a university where you can combine an art history class and a visual culture. There's different ways that these international education experiences can occur. Independent learning styles, cultural immersion, travel, diversity that comes from experiential learning opportunities, right? Opportunities for international internships, increased research opportunities, field trips abroad. Again, getting to experience your education. You may get to learn about Italian studies while studying in Switzerland and get to take a field trip to an Italian art museum with a classmate from Greece. So these are all things that you get to experience when you're at an international university.
Awesome. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that might be holding students back from pursuing their degrees abroad. I think often there's a lot of factors, some real, but a lot of them are going to be perceived. So I'm going to try to walk through some myth breaking with you all. So I think one thing that we can both work together on the counselor and the rep side is helping students get more familiarity with international schools. Often they don't know where to search, how to start the process of finding a program of overseas. The process can be very different depending on if they're applying, to an American university abroad or a university in the UK, Australia. The perceived costs, I'll go into that a little bit more on another slide, but the tuition costs, I think there is that perception that going abroad is always going to be more expensive than studying here in the US. Distance from home, that can be a real factor. Maybe students aren't ready to go at undergrad for a full degree abroad. But I think if we can work together to raise the awareness of what options are out there, maybe they take, a study abroad semester in undergrad, they end up going to their master's degree later on. I think we've all met so many students that apply for a master's degree and they said, I was interested in undergrad, I just wasn't ready. So I think even if we expose them now, down the line, it's still beneficial, even if they don't do an undergrad. Some of them is, I think, there's always, it's too hard to apply. It's going to be expensive again. The systems are just going to be way too different. But I think, again, raising awareness early on, helping students prepare for those entry requirements as soon as possible. We're really going to be able to prepare those students a lot better for those differences. And the last one, I'll go again into it a little bit more in the next couple slides, but concerns about the quality of the degree. I think there is that perception that studying in the US is going to be the only thing that employers really recognize. Okay, next slide, please. So as far as accessibility, I think that is one thing. Depending on the location, there's always the perception it's still going to be 4 years. But I think when we tell students, if you come to the UK, apart from Scotland or Australia, you can finish a degree in 3 years. Students and families are always a little bit surprised.
I think that's always a great fit for those students that don't necessarily fit into wanting to do the liberal arts and general education. But then it's like one thing that I think if students want to get through their undergrad degree a lot faster, it's a great fit. Again, we're going to have really transparent entry requirements. So for a lot of universities, we're going to post if we have specific APs we want, if we accept dual enrollment, honors, what we would look for as far as the admissions process. So students can really plan ahead and kind of know which universities they're going to be eligible to potentially get an offer at. It will be more affordable often. I'll show that on the next slide. And again, there's recognized quality. So there's universities in the UK, like the Russell Group. There's going to be world rankings like QS, but there are like an abundance of universities outside the US that are going to have really strong quality. So just look a little bit more cost. This is just some examples of cost of attendance for 1 year. Again, I think it's really going to depend on where your students are looking. So if they're looking in state, it might be more expensive to go abroad. But if they're looking a lot of out of state or private schools, it might actually be more affordable. If you look at Tulane versus University of Upland, that's a huge difference. And pair that again with some universities are going to be 3 versus 4 years. So you're saving even more money cutting that final year off. And then the last slide for the myths is the rankings. I think, again, that's one thing we have the perception you have to study in the US, but just this is the QS 2026 rankings that were released recently. And out of the top 10 universities, only 4 of the 10 are in the US. There's 4 in the UK. There's like Switzerland, Singapore. Out of the top 100 QS ranking universities, there's actually only 26 in the US. So again, like there are so many well-ranked universities that are going to have research opportunities and employment opportunities for students after they graduate or during their studies.
All right, so what can you do now? We want you to encourage participation in global learning opportunities, right? So make it happen. Introduce opportunities early, their sophomore, junior year, get them out there, get them to these places, get them to universities so they can experience this as early and often as possible. Normal study abroad degrees, not just semesters abroad. We do offer 4-year accredited degrees. So let them know that, again, exposure is the best thing. Let them know the opportunities that they can have to learn about these opportunities that are out there. Do research on international summer programs, virtual exchange programs that integrate a globalized curriculum. Franklin, for instance, offers a pre-college summer high school program that allows our students to kind of dip their toe in the water while they're earning them college credit. So they get an idea of the location, they get to learn about the university, they get to experience the environment. They're allowed to, or the course allows them to explore that subject area and see if it's an area that they want to pursue. And then at the end of their experience that they are there, they get to now evaluate, is this for me? Am I able to travel abroad without it being too honed in, right? It's a short experience, a short time that they get to experience something like this. So
yeah, absolutely. And to give just another example of a summer program, so at Imperial, we do a 2-week course for 16 and 17-year-olds. So we usually offer 4 different topics. This past summer, there was examples like engineering, and I believe medicine or physics was another one of them. But typically first week of this program, they do top classes with one of our academics in that subject. And then they actually have an innovation challenge the second week. So they work with other students to work on an invention or kind of a problem solving competition. But there's going to be like housing, kind of local visits in London. And we always include a couple workshops too, as far as like how to prepare to apply to a UK university, things like personal statements and entry requirements. So it's a great opportunity for students too to kind of plan ahead if they are looking at UK universities to get that information while they're in the UK. Some other ways that you can help your students get more information early on is offering virtual information session nights. So if you know one of us, get in touch with us or the AIRR-NA board. We're always happy to try to put together a panel. So maybe you want to do those specific to a region, like a UK or Ireland AUAs, or maybe you want to do like subjects like STEM or kind of fine arts, just to give students different options. And I'll let Maddie talk a little bit more about this in a second, but planning international college visits too. So if you're able to organize a group with your school or local schools, and come into our countries to explore some of the university options.
Awesome. Thank you, Karmen. So yeah, that kind of leads into this last portion of our presentation today, which is where we're going to have a little fun dreaming up ideas and kind of maybe inspiring you if it is something that is possible and accessible for your student populations that you're working with. And that is travel program opportunities abroad for your students. If I would be able to click through, there we go. We'll start with the challenges and then we'll go into the opportunities. But obviously high school trips abroad are not super common in the US. There's not a lot of data to nail down exactly what percentage of high schools do offer these types of trips, but we know that it is kind of limited and there are reasons behind that. So why is that participation or even the offering relatively rare? Planning, it's a big deal to put together a trip, not only abroad or not only a trip period, but a trip abroad for students who majority of which are going to be minors. So you have a lot of factors to kind of consider when you're working with that. And you also have to work with a travel company for liability reasons, typically. The cost behind that is also a little bit more than what it might cost to just travel as an individual because you are working with a travel organization or company, because there's that added cost there. And then there's typically the cost for participants is also covering the chaperone costs, things like that. So with that, the perceived value in terms of what families are looking at and saying, do I really want to spend $4,000 or $5,000 for my student to go to X country for, 7-8 days? I don't know. So it's definitely, there are those barriers there, but if you're able to kind of work through some opportunities, which we'll talk about on the next slide, it is definitely a possibility that you can do this. And we think there's nothing quite like getting your student on campus somewhere to get to see universities and really do what they call the vibe check now. And, can they see themselves really moving to this place and living in this new city, in this new country? If it's really just not an opportunity for you and your students, we do have the virtual visit solution here that we wanted to plug again. So maybe you offer one region a month for your students, whether it's, the UK, continental Europe, American universities abroad, things like that. And maybe you do a virtual info session once a month after hours to where families can come as well and participate with in-country representatives like ourselves. And maybe you work with other schools as well that are down the road from you to maximize exposure and attendance that way. But let's say that in a perfect world, you are looking and potentially wanting to travel abroad with your students. Again, it gives students that firsthand experience with international education opportunities. They're there, they can say, I've been to the campus, it felt amazing. I can picture myself living there for 3, 4, 5 years, doing my degree, maybe even staying and working in this country afterward. It also is something that you can do, you don't necessarily have to build it from scratch. So you could utilize opportunities with existing trips. If your Spanish club goes to Spain or your choir goes to Italy every summer or every other summer, things like that, you could build in a couple campus visits with those program leaders while they're already over there in that country, just to kind of expose them that way. It doesn't necessarily have to be a focus trip on higher education itself. Maybe you have, 4 or 5 students at your institution or 4 or 5 students that you work with who are interested, and you know of other IECs who have students who are interested or other sister schools down the road that are interested as well. If you need to get a minimum number and you don't have it with your own people, maybe you team up with other institutions or representatives and get numbers that way. And then it also gets students to kind of meet new folks that way as well, which is always fun. But let's say, again, in a perfect world, the interest is there. You have enough students within your institution. Maybe you do build a bespoke program in a specific country or region of interest that focuses on academic content and higher education opportunities. So how would you do this if you did have that interest? I would definitely start with gathering data on where students are interested in and is there a common subject area interest or a couple, so that you can set up maybe some mini lectures and things with academics while you're visiting these campuses. Using institutional relationships again to maximize enrollment. So adding campus visits on an existing trip if you need, leaning into relationships with us, the in-country reps, to help set up visits on campus in our institutions. But what you'll want to do is definitely get an idea again of what your students are interested in, create an ideal itinerary outline, program objectives, and brainstorm a realistic cost range that would work with internal stakeholders. The next thing you'd want to do is find a travel company that aligns with your program's goals, financial constraints, things like that. So you might want to look at more boutique style travel companies because they're the ones that are going to be able to be more flexible with you. I come from a background where I did custom programming for study abroad for middle school, high school, and college students. And the company I worked for, we were very flexible. We really tried to work with you as much as possible to make it that customized program for you and your students. So a timeline of what that might look like. We would always suggest 12 months before departure. This is when you're contacting several travel companies that align with your goals for the program and request proposals from them. A good proposal should take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to really put together from scratch, create, and perfect. And there should be some back and forth between you and the company that you're working with so that you really make it, tuned to what you want for you and your students. About 9 months before departure is when you should have that proposal finalized, approved through all of your legal channels and the company's legal channels, and then you can begin recruitment with your students. 7 months before departure is when you'll want to finalize your group roster and enrollment on that program. And then 2 to 6 months from departure is when you're going to want to work on all the nitty-gritty details. I've talked a lot today, everyone. I apologize. So collecting payment, working with the travel company to secure reservations and activities outside of just doing campus visits, working with us and country representatives and our teams on campus to set up those customized visits for your school groups. And also adjusting if vendor availability changes at all. I want to highlight group travel is an art and not a science. Things change, things go wrong. So you do have to kind of go into it with flexibility and that attitude of, okay, everything might not be exactly what it looked like on that proposal, but we'll get you darn close. 1 month prior to departure is when you'll really kick it into gear, hold pre-departure orientation meetings with the travel company, with your students and their families. And then it's bon voyage, you're on your way and you get to bring students to this region where they're all interested in, visit campus, maybe get lectures from academics, try some labs out, take a tour, see the accommodations, talk more about admissions and what that looks like. So again, it's a really great opportunity. We know it's not always available for everyone, but we did want to highlight what that process might look like if you think it's something that might work with you and your students and maybe some other schools within your area as well if you wanted to team up for a larger group trip. So that's us for the day. We hope you had fun and maybe this inspired some ideas for you to bring back to your school and your students. We want to highlight a couple of our upcoming events here. You can scan the QR code on the screen if you'd like to register for any of them. We've got our NACAT conference reception on September 18th, so in just about a month. Hope to see you guys there. And then we do have a few tours that we are doing as the AIRR-NA group in Texas, on the East Coast, and on the West Coast. So if you're in any of those regions and interested in attending a counselor lunch or coming to an evening fair or sending your students to an evening fair, please feel free to sign up and register there and share out with your students about those opportunities. So we'll pass it over to questions. Looks like we've got about 5 minutes left in our session. Doesn't look like we have any questions right now. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We'll hang out for a little bit. But again, we thank you all so much for coming and speaking with us today about the power of place and what those international education opportunities can look like at the secondary level to get your students excited about potentially pursuing higher education abroad.
Doesn't look like we're getting any
Well,
questions.
yeah, I think we're all good here. Well, thank you all so much. Please do reach out to any of us if you have any questions in the future, any ideas that you might want to bounce off of us in terms of virtual visits or in-person trips in the future. I work in this role now, but I still geek out over travel planning, so happy to give my unsolicited advice. But yeah, thank you again for attending and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.